So you all know our next guests. I don't need to introduce them again. But to my right is Karl Soule, and over there is Kylee Pena. And please welcome them from Adobe.
All right. Before I jump into the new stuff with Premiere, I just wanted to take 2 minutes to just kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff that Billy mentioned. First off, Billy mentioned that he uses something, it's a euphonics mixer. It's very similar to this one. These are still available. There's a lot of used ones on the market, so that can be one way of getting something relatively inexpensive. Just know that Premiere uses, under the settings control surface, this is where you would actually add a mixer. And we support 3 primary protocols. So Yukon and Mackie mixers are generally usable inside of Premiere. They'll automatically map to sliders 1 through 8, and you can bank them. So if you're going in and you're doing mixing deeper in a sequence, you can kind of page over to like 9 through 16 and so on and so forth. There's one new one on here, it's called Monogram, and I just wanted to call this out because I had the opportunity to play with the latest and greatest from these guys. They used to be called Palette. I don't know if anybody ever backed them on Kickstarter, but the quality of the components that they're using has just gone way, way up. I was really, really impressed. I was one of the original backers when they were called Palette. The cool thing about these modules is that's just it. They are modules. They snap together with magnets and little connectors. And so you can kind of build out a control panel that does what you need it to do, whether it's color. And they come with a series of software controls that automatically map to things inside of Premiere, After Effects, Audition, other software applications. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, something to check out. There was a lot of mention about LucidLink, and I'm actually using a little bit of LucidLink tonight. Again, the basic idea of LucidLink, once you sign into your file space, it mounts in Finder and looks just like a drive. So the beauty of it is the learning curve, there really isn't much of a learning curve. It's if you know how to use shared storage and you want to come in and use a file, you can grab a file and hit play on it.
It is.
And it will start to play. The 2 main ways that we see people using LucidLink, it is possible to put all of your media up there. Just keep in mind you're paying per month based on how many terabytes you're using. Okay, and if you're using Lucid for your media, which is great because it's like having something like a Nexus, where you're connected from anywhere. It's $80 per terabyte per month. If you're just going to use it to store your Premiere project files in a production, you can typically get away with just using the basic file space, which it looks like prices actually come down a little bit. It's $20 per terabyte per month. So I'm not a salesperson for Lucid. The one reason that I'm a big fan of this is in the early days when we came out with productions for general consumption for the public, we released it in April of 2020. We designed productions to meet the needs of Hollywood working inside of a secure building with some kind of shared storage like a Nexus, and that's what it was designed to work on. And that's what Hollywood was telling us they needed. And of course, everything changed in 2020, and immediately they said, great, how do we use this in the cloud? And we tried it with Dropbox, we tried it with other things. What sets LucidLink apart is if any file changes on the cloud storage, Premiere is instantly aware of it. And so it prevents somebody with things like Dropbox, there's a time delay between when something goes up to Dropbox and then it comes back down to your assistant editors or the other editors' machines. And so there's a danger there if you're not constantly communicating over the phone or via Slack or something, that 2 people could open up a project at the same time, and then all of a sudden, one of them is going to get locked out of the work that they just started working on. So with LucidLink, we've tested this with like 10 editors all double-clicking on the same project file at the same time. One of them gets the lock, gets the ability to make changes. Everybody else gets a red lock icon. They're locked out of it. It's read-only. So that's one of the reasons why I'm such a big proponent of it. It really fills a need. So hopefully we can get some of the reps from LucidLink to come to a future event. But I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that since those were some of the big questions that we were just talking about. Okay. Premiere. How many people have used enhanced speech yet? Anybody? Did it work? Yes. Awesome. I see a couple. It's not going to work in every situation. If you're not familiar with enhanced speech, this is actually kind of the first generative AI feature built into Premiere. And it's designed to tackle a very, very specific need. What this is doing is basically we spend a lot of time trying to fix audio problems. If you get scenes that come in and the director already knows they're going to be ADR'd at some point, you may be tasked with cleaning them up enough for playback for the producer. If you're doing interviews in a documentary, the law of microphone battery never dies, right? You may end up with just the camera audio. So there's all kinds of effects and filters inside of Premiere, and Premiere for a long time has had tools in the Essential Sound panel, including all these filters for things like reduce noise, reduce rumble, de-hum, de-ess, reduce reverb. But these are all about carving away stuff, right? We're trying to carve away the bad stuff and leave the good stuff. Enhanced speech is a different animal. What this is designed to do is build a voice model of what the person is saying, capture their emotion, the tone, the inflection, and then regenerate the waveform as if it were recorded with a lav mic in a controlled room. I'll play one quick example here. This is the quintessential, came back from lunch, forgot to put the lav mic back on the coach.
In particular, man, today is Tuesday, so we'll start her out on an 800 warm-up. Then after that, we'll just a little stretching and some.
I've used a lot of reduced reverb features to try and get that lav mic sound back. I've never seen something that really, really captures it. Let's try enhanced speech. I'll just turn this on. The only control that we have here is a mix slider, which lets you mix back in some of the original. Just like computer animation, there is kind of an uncanny valley for audio when we do this. So usually the best results are going to be to use the AI-generated audio with some of the original audio mixed back in. So let's try this, just the full AI here.
Correct, man. Today is Tuesday, so we'll start her out on an 800 warm-up. Then after that, we'll just a little stretching and some drills.
Now, if I mix that in a little bit.
For today in particular, man, today is Tuesday, so we'll start her out on an 800 warm-up. Then after that, we'll just a little stretching and some drills.
So that's enhanced speech in a nutshell. This is in the, thank you. This is in the shipping version of the software. So if you're using 24.2, you have access to this today. We're just super excited to put it in there. It works on about 20 different languages. It is language dependent. Premiere has to kind of understand what the person is saying in order to rebuild the waveform. So just something to be aware of. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about something kind of controversial for a second here. I'm going to talk about vertical video. Now, how many here are? I'm now a believer. It is an art form. I'm not. I was a naysayer for a long time. How many here are cutting vertical video for social? Okay, awesome. All right. I feel you guys. It's okay. One of the things that we have added into Premiere is the ability, when you make a new project, there is now an option up at the top here to add something called a project template. And Premiere is shipping with some project templates. Those 16:9, folks, we got your back to broadcast templates, all the different types of sequences that you might need. But there's one in here for social media templates. And what's really cool about these is these actually include in the different sequences an overlay graphic that actually shows you where the UI is. And this is something for YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, Twitter, whatever they call it this week. Yeah, so basically you can see what the UI is going to do to the video once it's time to export. Now, speaking of export, we have now added direct TikTok export where you can actually sign into TikTok directly inside of the export panel, and you can set this to export direct to TikTok. So we're working with the social media sites. We've already had this for YouTube. So it's something that people were asking us about being able to export to TikTok. We now have a way of doing that directly. So this will render the video, upload it direct to your account. And you can even choose your thumbnail, use the current frame, you know, to pick what your cover image is. Cool? Okay. Oops. All right. Let's talk about some of the stuff that is coming in the beta. And I am in the beta right now. If you're not familiar, the beta is in the Creative Cloud desktop application. You can go home, download this tonight. Just click on apps, and then click on beta apps, and you can pull a copy of the Premiere Pro beta. What I wanted to show you that we have coming are a bunch of improvements and changes to audio. In the timeline itself, the timeline, the way that we draw the waveforms has now changed so that even as you collapse the timelines down, we still give you usable waveform information. So there's been a big effort to modernize and update the code dealing with audio in the timeline. This also includes icons for things like if the audio has been tagged as music, we can see that right away. I can click on this to open up the Essential Sound panel to see the controls I have for adjusting that particular type of audio. Now, if you're used to going in and adding audio transitional effects where you put in crossfades by dragging and dropping them in, you can stop it in the next release because now you're going to have on-screen controls for adding these crossfades. So if I delete that, you'll see that there is a little tiny handle here. If I drag this way, it's going to add a crossfade in, or it's going to add in a fade in on this side of the clip. If I drag it across, it creates my crossfade. But even better, how many here love to have to switch between constant power and what's the other one? Constant gain? How about just being able to adjust that dynamically right on the timeline? Long time coming. Long time coming. All right. You may notice the colors have changed a little bit. How many here know what cerulean is? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So the names of the various label colors, a number of years back, this is an actual true story. One of the engineers was playing with new label color names and new colors as they were adding. We originally only had, I think it was like 8 label colors, and they expanded it out to whatever it is now, 16, 20, I can't remember. Some of these names came in, and it's kind of like, this is the one that everyone seems to poke fun at. But we wanted to kind of modernize this, and we also wanted to be able to give people the ability to save specific color presets. So this interface down here in the corner is new, and this also allows you to pick between different color palettes, including the new vibrant color palette with nice simple names like dark blue, dark green, dark pink. Or my favorite, video, audio, graphics, subtitles. Okay. But you can build your own. These are clickable color pickers. You can build these out the way you like them, and then you can save them and hand them off to your editorial team so that you have consistency. Okay, that's another big thing that's coming. All right.
It's not in 24.2?
Not in 24.2. This is in the beta. But yeah, it is on the way.
I bet it comes really soon, actually.
I bet it does too. Billy, I'm going to put you on the spot for just a second. I'm sorry. I have a clip here of Billy. And I'm going to switch over to my text-based editing workspace here. Now, I am going to take this interview, and for the next 35 minutes, I'm going to cut out all the ums and ahs. I'm going to get rid of all the shots of the voice of the producer, and I'm going to get rid of all those production pauses that happen while somebody in the background is resetting a light frame. No. How about I do it in 30 seconds? You ready? Okay. I've got Billy's clip on the timeline. I'm going to go up to this little widget that you see here, this triangle with a line on it, and click on it. In the shipping version, we have pauses and filler words. So this is something you can go home tonight with 24.2 and do. If I want to get rid of all the pauses in this clip, I can select all the pauses, and the time frame for those, I can pick what I want. I don't, 3/4 of a second is, I guess, how about a second and a half? We'll just save that. Now I have all my pauses that are over a second and a half. There's 13 of them. I'll hit the delete key. I'll say do an extract, edit, delete all. All those edits are now done. Now let me do that to the filler words. I'll select filler words, and if you don't know what a filler word is, it's every and ah, you know, those types of things. We spend a lot of time cutting them out. I'm going to hit delete. There are 39 of them. Billy, you're better than I am. I would probably have about 115. So I'll go ahead and hit delete all. Now those edits are done. Now lastly, I've gone through this clip and I've actually, when Premiere does the speech-to-text transcription, and it does this as your clips are importing, it will just automatically do the transcription in the background. It just provides names like speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, but you can quickly go in and you just have to change one time, go in and say, no, speaker 1 is Billy, speaker 2 is the producer, speaker 3 is a production assistant that said something to the producer. I can now go in the beta, this is the next big thing that's coming, speakers. I can go in and actually select speakers and say, I want to get rid of I don't need the production. Why did the production assistant even talk? Let's just delete that. I'm kidding. Poor PA. Okay. We'll just get rid of that. And then also, I don't need the questions from the producer. I just want to focus on what Billy's saying. So I'm going to select all the producer quotes and hit delete all. Now I'm down to the good bits, and now I can start to kind of craft this out. I can continue to select stuff, delete it. I can move things around by copying and pasting. The edit will change with that. Is this ever going to do J cuts, L cuts, add B-roll for me, put in finished music sound? No. But that idea of building the bones out of your edit, this will get you faster to that creative space. Make sense? Okay.
Do we want to take a quick question?
Yeah, we can take one question. Yes.
Quick question. Can you tell the software what the filler words are, or does it automatically do it on its own?
It does it on its own at this point. Because it's different from language to language. This is something that's supported in 20 different languages. So the filler words in Mandarin Chinese are way different than they are in Spanish or English. So it automatically knows that, and it will do it. Yeah.
And then all the different points and clicks that you just did, that's non-destructive, correct?
Yeah, I'm just basically doing edits in the timeline. So
But in the history, can you go and say, okay, I just did 4 things, but the second thing that I just did is the only thing that I want to undo.
not quite, but
If you go
what you...
further, you know what I mean?
Yeah, one of the things that you can do in this, for the sake of speed, I just did this very, very quickly, but the idea is instead of just hitting delete all, this will give you a list of them and you can step through them and listen to them and delete them if you're concerned that it's cutting something out it shouldn't. Let's jump over to color for just a second. How many here have ever seen log footage go to air? It's a creative choice. Yeah. No? Yeah, sure it is. One of the things that we are trying to do at Adobe is build out intelligent color for log color management so that when you bring in your log footage, it just looks good to start with, but to give you the ability to just turn that off and go back to the log if you are going to do color work in Premiere. So we have added a number of releases back. We added something called Auto Detect Log Video Color Space. And if you haven't seen this yet, in the Lumetri color panel, this is where you typically have all those color wheels and controls and dials for adjusting things. This is now also your one-stop shop for all the settings in Premiere that are related to color. So this means that I can come in here and I can check my project and I can turn on Auto Detect Log Video Color Space, and if it recognizes the clips are log, it'll automatically set them to my sequence. So this is recognized that these are Canon Log 3 Cinema Gamut clips. In my sequence, if I click on my sequence, I can see this is a Rec. 709 sequence, and this is also going to go through and do some tone mapping to just make sure that this log format fits in Rec. 709 the best way possible. If I change the sequence to an HDR sequence, and you've got a full HDR pipeline in Premiere, it's being used for dailies and films. David Fincher's The Killer did a whole HDR pipeline for dailies where their in-house colorist colored the dailies for HDR. They edited in HDR. So that was what they were looking at the entire time. So you have that ability to do this in here. Now, anybody ever deal with iPhone footage that looked completely washed out and blown out? Okay. The problem is in the phone, there's a little switch marked HDR, and it will record in HDR automatically. If you're throwing that footage on a 709 timeline, Premiere is showing you accurately what an HDR graded clip is going to look like in standard dynamic range. Everything above 100 is going to get blown out. So we've added something called auto tone mapping, and the idea behind auto tone mapping is this takes that HDR footage, and I'll just select this here and make sure that, yeah, it's recognizing everything correctly. This is just some footage from my iPhone shot in Titus Canyon here. If I tone map this, this will actually go in and it applies kind of a nice look to this to help it fit in the color space that I'm currently editing, which is, for standard dynamic range. And there's even some controls in here where I can even kind of fine tune this and tweak this on a clip by clip basis. So if you're working with mixing and matching high dynamic range footage in an SDR project, we now have you covered. It's built right into the timeline. These settings are typically on by default. And these settings are found in various places. I could adjust the sequence settings by coming up here, but this gives me everything I need at my fingertips. Brand new, Apple Log. So if anybody's on an iPhone 15, Apple Log is, ProRes Log is a fantastic new format that just got added in the beta about 2 weeks ago. We're starting to see more people shooting on it where you can connect up on with the new USB-C port on the iPhones. You can shoot for long periods of time in Apple Log, and now that's fully supported in Premiere. Really quick, I just wanted to touch on markers. One of the things that we have done with markers is we want to make it easier to select and see your markers. We're starting to see more and more teams of editors need to be able to hide one person's markers while they have their own markers, and vice versa. So like a lead editor will have markers in the timeline. The assistant doesn't need to see them. The assistant's doing markers for different things. The lead editor doesn't want to see those. In the markers panel, you can selectively choose which markers you're looking at by clicking on the colors. This is in the shipping version today, so you could select and say, I just want to see red and green markers. Something that's coming in the beta, we've realized the control for the markers panel has been a little kind of funky as far as, like if you've ever had a clip selected in the timeline, Premiere will typically just show you the markers in your selected clips. Well, we've added some new controls. They're going to be found in this little flyout menu here. I can now show all markers, all sequence markers, all clip markers. And I love this one, ignore selection in timeline. In other words, just because I have a clip selected, keep showing me all the markers in my timeline. So we're trying to do some work to just really help with the overall marker workflow. With that, I am going to turn things over to Kylee. If you haven't seen it, I'll definitely put this up later, but we do have the best practices guide if you're not familiar with that. And I've got some videos that can help if you're trying to learn productions. If you heard Andy talk about using productions tonight, or Billy talking about productions, and you're like, what is this and how do I learn it? This is a great resource for being able to do that. So I'll leave that up for a second.
Awesome. Thanks, Karl.